a small body crashed through the underbrush and hit the dirt hard. Then another, smaller still, tumbled after it. Blood streaked the leaves. Teeth marks ran down a tiny shoulder. The second pup couldn't even stand. Behind them, a deep growl rolled through the trees, low and hungry, the kind of sound that meant something much bigger was coming. A woman dropped to her knees between the two pups and the dark line of the forest. She had no weapon. She had no warning. She had nothing but a basket of herbs and two hands that were already shaking. Her name was Myra, and she lived 3 villages from any wolf she'd ever feared. What Myra did in the next 40 seconds would, by the very next morning, drag the most dangerous wolf in the kingdom out of his territory and into hers. Stay right with me on this one. Myra lived in a cottage at the bend of the river, half a day's walk from any neighbor she could call by name. She liked it that way. People brought her their sick children and their broken animals and their winter coughs, and then they left her alone. That suited her fine. Her grandmother had taught her 2 things before dying: how to listen to a body, and how to walk through the forest without making it angry. That morning, Myra had gone out to cut willow bark. The basket on her hip was half full. She was thinking about supper. She was not thinking about wolves. Now she had 2 of them bleeding at her feet. The first pup was easy to read. Gray fur, wide chest for its size, a black crescent of fur right between its eyes, perfectly shaped, almost as if someone had painted it. Even she knew what that mark meant. Every child in every village 3 days ride from here knew. That mark belonged to the Crescent Pack, the Alpha King's pack, the most feared bloodline in the kingdom. The second pup was harder to place at first. Smaller, reddish-brown. One of its front paws was torn open and the bones showed. Myra would not understand until later what the curl of its tail meant, or the white tip on its right ear. But anyone in the Ironclaw lands would have known instantly. The 2 packs had been spilling each other's blood for as long as anyone alive remembered. She did not know any of this in that moment. She did not stop to know it. What she saw was a baby with a bone showing through its leg, and another baby with teeth marks across its shoulder, and a deep cut that would not stop bleeding. She saw 2 infants. That was all. That was enough. "All right," she said out loud, mostly to herself. "All right. We're going home." She gathered the gray pup first because it was bigger and could probably walk if she helped it. She put one arm under its chest. It snapped at her the way a frightened child swings. She caught the snap with the side of her wrist and held still until the little one realized she was not letting go and also not hurting it. Then she lifted it. The second pup, the red one, could not walk at all. She put down her basket. She put down her herbs. She wrapped that pup in her shawl and held it against her chest the way she used to hold her sister's babies before her sister moved to the coast. And she started walking. Her cottage was a mile away. It took her almost an hour. She did not feel any of it. By the time she got the door open and laid them both down on her healing table, she was talking. She had not stopped talking. She did not know what she was saying. Her grandmother used to say the talking was for you, not for them. The hurt thing did not understand the words. But the steady sound of a human voice that was not panicking, was not angry, was just there. That sound told the hurt thing it was safe. So Myra talked. She cleaned the gray pup first. Warm water, crushed yarrow, honey to close the smaller cuts. She set its shoulder and bound it. The pup did not bite her again. It watched her with eyes that were too old for its body. Wolves were like that. Then she turned to the red pup, and she almost cried. Whoever had done this had meant to kill it. The paw was not just torn. The leg above it had been twisted. She could see the line where bone had been forced the wrong way. A pup this small should never have been in a fight this big. Somebody had picked it up and thrown it. Somebody had wanted it dead. She set the leg with two thin splints of green wood. She wrapped it tight. She fed both pups a few drops of warm broth from her fingertip until they stopped shaking. Then she put them in a basket by the fire, and she sat down on the floor next to them, and she breathed for the first time since she had heard them crash through the underbrush. It was only then, sitting there with the firelight on the gray pup's forehead, that she saw the crescent mark again. And it was only then that her stomach went cold. She knew whose pup she had just brought into her home. She did not yet know whose other pup was sleeping next to it. The knock came just before sunset. It was not really a knock. Knocks have rhythm. 3 slow pounds on her door, hard enough to rattle the iron latch. That was not a neighbor. Myra stood up. She set down the bowl in her hand. She did not run to the basket by the fire, even though every part of her wanted to. The 2 pups were still asleep. The gray one's breathing had finally evened out. She did not want to wake him. She opened the door. 3 men stood on her step. They were not men. She knew that the moment she looked at them. They had the shape of men. They wore the clothes of men. But the air around them moved differently. The dog she had taken in 2 winters ago, the one she'd buried in the spring, would have bolted before the door was fully open. She could feel it in her own skin. The one in the middle was the tallest. His coat was black, with a silver clasp at the shoulder. The clasp was the same crescent shape as the mark on the pup's forehead. "You have something of ours," he said. His voice was flat. Not angry. Worse than angry. The way a man speaks when the matter is already settled in his head, and you are only being told for the sake of politeness. "I have a child who almost died this afternoon," Myra said. "If that is yours, come and see him. But you will speak softly inside this house, and you will not pick him up." The 3 of them went very still. It was not what they had expected. The tall one tilted his head. "Do you know who you are speaking to?" "I know what the mark means," she said. "And I know that mark belongs on a grown wolf, not on a baby. So I do not care today what it means tomorrow. Today, that little one needs to sleep. Come and see him." Quietly, she stepped aside. The tall one came in first. The other 2 stayed at the door. She watched him move across her small room toward the basket, and she watched the line of his shoulders change. She had patched up enough fathers to know that change. It is the moment a man sees the worst thing he has been afraid of, and then sees that it is not as bad as he feared. He crouched. He did not touch the pup. He looked at the splint, the wrapping, the careful binding across the shoulder. He looked at the way the small chest rose and fell. Then he saw the second basket. He went still in a different way. The kind of still a wolf goes when it sees another wolf. "You took in an ironclaw whelp," he said very quietly. "I took in 2 hurt babies," Myra said. "I did not stop to ask their names." He stood up slowly. He looked at her for a long time. She did not look away. Her grandmother had told her once, "If a wolf wants you to lower your eyes, it is already deciding whether to kill you. So you do not lower your eyes. You let it look at whatever is in there. And you wait. My king will come for him," the tall one said at last. "Tomorrow. At first light. You will be ready." "I will be here," she said. "I do not move out of my own house for anyone." A flicker crossed his face. It might have been respect. It might have been something else. He turned, and the 3 of them were gone before she had finished closing the door. She stood with her back against the wood for a long minute. Then she breathed. She walked to the fire. She set the kettle. She added 2 extra logs because the night was going to get cold and the pups needed warmth in their bones. She cut a slice of bread and put butter on it, and she did not eat it. She told herself that the worst had passed. She told herself that the Crescent Pack had found their lost child. That tomorrow the Alpha King would come, take one look at his son, see the boy was alive only because she had not asked questions, and ride away with what was his. That she would be left with the red pup, and in a few days perhaps she could send word to the Ironclaw villages, and they too would come and take their child back, and the matter would be finished. She told herself this because the alternative was unthinkable. She drank her tea slowly. She watched the firelight on the basket. The gray pup's ear twitched in a dream. The red pup made a small wet sound and burrowed deeper into the shawl. She thought, foolishly, that the hardest part of the day was over. She did not know that less than 4 hours later, riders from the second pack would surround her cottage in the dark. She woke to her dog barking. Then she remembered her dog was dead. The sound was not from inside the cottage. It was from outside, low and many-throated, and it was the worst sound she had ever heard in her life. There were wolves around her house. Not 3. Not 5. Many. She could feel them in the floorboards. She sat up slowly. The fire had burned down to embers. The 2 pups were still asleep in the basket. She moved toward the window without lighting a lamp. She did not need to see them to know. She could smell them. Wet fur. Iron. The cold metallic smell that comes off of weapons that have been recently used. A voice spoke from the other side of her door, and this voice was not flat. This voice was on fire. Bring out the cub. She did not answer. Bring him out or we burn the house. Now here is the thing. Myra was not brave the way warriors are brave. She had never lifted a sword. She had never struck another person in her life. Her courage was the small, stubborn courage of women who tend wounds. The courage of refusing to let go of a hand, even when the body attached to that hand is dying. She walked to the door. She did not open it. There are 2 children sleeping in this house, she said, loud enough to carry. If you burn it, you burn them. If that is what the Ironclaw does to its own, then strike a match. Otherwise, lower your voice. He is breathing for the first time today. Silence on the other side. Then a different voice. Older. Slower. Step away from the door, healer. No. You don't understand who we are. I understand, she said, that one of those babies is yours. I understand the other one is the son of the man who has hunted you for 100 years. And I understand they are sleeping 6 feet from each other right now, and neither of them cares. So before you decide what you do next, you might want to think about why that is. The silence this time was longer. She heard the older voice murmur something to the others. She could not catch the words. Then the older voice spoke again. Open the door, healer. No weapons. You have my word. She thought about it. She thought about her grandmother, who had said that a wolf's word was a strange thing. Not a lie, but not the same as a man's word either. She opened the door. The man who stood there was old. Older than she had thought a wolf could get. His hair was the color of iron, and his eyes were the color of frost, and there was a long pale scar running from his temple to his jaw. Behind him, in the moonlight, she counted at least a dozen. None of them had drawn a weapon, but none of them needed to. I am Havar, the old one said. I speak for the Ironclaw. Myra, show me my son. She stepped back. He came inside alone. The others did not move. He saw the gray pup first, of course, because the gray pup was bigger and closer to the door. The old wolf stopped. He looked at the crescent mark for a long time. Myra saw his hand twitch toward the knife at his belt, and she saw him stop himself. That one is not mine, he said low. I know. You know what would happen if I picked him up right now and walked him out of here. I know. Why is he still alive? Because he is a child, Myra said, and I do not punish children for what their fathers did. The old wolf looked at her. The frost in his eyes did not soften, but something behind it shifted, the way a stone shifts when the ground under it has changed. He moved to the second basket. He saw the red pup. He saw the splint. He saw the careful binding. He knelt the way the other one had knelt earlier, and he did not touch the pup. Who did this to him? He said. I don't know. It was not the crescent. I don't know, she said again. I found him in the forest. I did not see what happened before. Haver was quiet for a long moment. There are wolves in this kingdom, he said at last, who would profit from a war between us and the crescent. There are wolves who would throw a child of either house into a fire if they thought it would start one. He stood up slowly. I will not take him tonight. He cannot be moved. You have set the leg correctly. If I take him now, he will not walk again. Tomorrow you will give him to me. The Alpha King is coming at first light, Myra said. The old wolf's face did not change. But the men behind him, the one still in the dark by her fence, made a sound. Not a word. A sound. The sound a pack makes when it understands that the night just got much longer. Then we will be here too, Havar said. And whatever happens, healer, you stand behind me. Not in front. Do you understand? I understand. He left. The Ironclaw did not leave. They moved back into the tree line, and they stayed there. She could see their eyes between the trunks if she looked carefully. They were watching her house. They were watching the road. They were waiting for sunrise. If you are still with me, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. Stories like this one take work to make, and your tap is what keeps them coming. Now back to Myra and the longest night of her life. She did not sleep. She sat by the fire with the 2 babies, and she waited for the dawn. He came on foot. That was the first thing the Ironclaw warriors noticed, and it changed their faces. Myra saw it through the window. They had been pacing for an hour, low and ready. Then they all looked the same direction at the same time, and they all went still. A king does not come on foot. Down the rough path from the forest, in the gray first light, walked one man. No horse. No riders. No banner. He wore black. There was nothing on his shoulders. No clasp. No mantle. No crown of any kind. If you had passed him in a market, you would have thought he was a hunter coming home late. But the trees were quiet around him. Birds did not call as he passed. That is how Myra knew. Behind him, far behind, she could see the rest of his pack. A dozen, maybe more. They had stopped at the edge of her field. They were not coming any closer. He had told them to stay back. She opened the door before he reached it. He stopped 10 paces away. He looked at her. Myra had been looked at by frightened mothers, by dying men, by drunk husbands, by all kinds of eyes in her life. She had never been looked at like this. His eyes were the color of wet stone. He was younger than she had expected. Maybe 30. There was a thin scar across the bridge of his nose. He did not look angry. He did not look tired. He looked like a man who had been told something he could not yet make sense of. You are the one, he said. I am Myra. My scout told me what you said last night. I said many things. You said the mark belongs on a grown wolf, not on a baby. She did not answer. He nodded once slowly, as if confirming something to himself. Then he looked past her at the doorway, and he asked the question that no Alpha King had asked a stranger in 200 years. May I come into your house? Havar, the old Ironclaw, was standing at the edge of the field. He heard it. Every wolf there heard it. An alpha does not ask. An alpha enters where he wants. The asking was a thing so far outside the rules that Havar's hand actually moved to his sword and then stopped, because what he was watching could not be answered with a sword. "You may come in," Myra said. Quietly, "The little one is just sleeping." He came in. He did not look at her again until he had crossed the room. He went straight to the basket. He knelt the way the others had knelt. But this kneeling was different, and even Myra, who knew nothing of wolves, could feel it. The first scout had knelt as a soldier kneels next to a wounded comrade. Havar had knelt as a king kneels to inspect. This man knelt the way a father kneels when he does not know whether the child in front of him is breathing. He stayed there for a long minute, not touching, just looking. Then he reached, very carefully, and laid one fingertip on the pup's forehead, right on the black crescent mark. The pup stirred. The small ear twitched. The small body shifted toward the warmth of the hand. And the pup let out a soft, sleepy whine of a kind Myra had heard 1,000 times from 1,000 human babies finding their parent in the dark. The Alpha King made a sound in his throat. It was not a word. It was something older than a word. He stayed kneeling for a long time. Myra did not move. She had stopped breathing somewhere in the last minute, and she did not know how to start again. Finally he stood. He turned. He looked at her, and now there was something raw in his face that had not been there before. "Healer," he said. "Yes. My son was taken from his nurse 6 days ago. We have searched every village within 4 days' ride. We have killed 11 men who would not tell us anything. We were going to kill the 12th tonight." He took one step closer. "You did not know who he was. You did not stop. You bound his shoulder and you put him by your fire, and you did not ask my name." "No," she said. "And you did the same for an Ironclaw whelp." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. Then he did the thing that everyone in the kingdom would talk about for the rest of their lives. He went down on one knee. Not the way a man kneels by a child. The other way. The way a king kneels before a queen at a coronation. The way a wolf kneels before a wolf he is acknowledging as higher than himself. He went down on one knee in the doorway of a healer's cottage, in front of a woman with no rank and no land and no protection, while the old alpha of his oldest enemy watched from the field. He bowed his head. "You held the line that I could not hold," he said. "2 children of 2 houses. In one room. Alive. I have spent 10 years making war so that one of those bloodlines would end. You spent one afternoon making sure both of them lived. I cannot answer that with a horse and a chest of coins. I will not insult you with one." He raised his head. His eyes were wet. Myra had not known that a wolf could weep. "You have my protection," he said. "Not my pack's. Mine. My own life stands between you and any harm that comes to this cottage, for as long as I breathe. And the same protection extends to the child sleeping in the second basket. He is Havar's blood. I do not care. He slept tonight under your roof. He is under mine now too." In the field, Havar dropped his sword. He did not drop it in surrender. He dropped it the way a man drops a thing he has been holding for so long that he had forgotten he was still holding it. The sun came up properly an hour later, and Myra found herself making tea for 20 wolves. It was the strangest thing she had ever done. They sat in her field, Crescent on one side, Ironclaw on the other, the way 2 armies sit when they have just been told not to fight and have not yet decided whether to believe it. She walked between them with a kettle and earthen cups, and they drank what she gave them, and they said almost nothing. The Alpha King sat on the low wall by her herb garden. Havar sat 10 paces from him on a tree stump. They did not look at each other for a long time. Then they did. Then they looked away again. That was the whole of their conversation for the first hour. The gray pup slept through it. The red pup woke up around mid-morning. Myra fed him by the fire. She kept him on the splint, and she let him drink slowly from her fingertip the way she had the night before. Havar came in to watch. He still did not touch the child. He had not earned it yet, he said, because he had not been the one who had bound the leg. He sat on her floor with his hands on his knees, and he watched his son's chest rise and fall. "How long until he walks?" he asked. 3 weeks, Myra said. "Maybe 4. He will limp. The bone will not be straight, no matter what I do. That is more than I dared hope for last night. He is a strong baby." "He is the last one I have," Havar said. She did not ask. He did not say more. The Alpha King came in after Havar left. He looked at his son again for a long time. Then he looked at Myra, and he said something she would think about for the rest of her life. "My father told me," he said, "that the difference between a king and a tyrant is 1 decision a week. He said that every week, a king is given the chance to do the easy thing, and every week he must choose the harder thing instead. I have made many of those choices badly. Last night, when I was told there was a healer with both pups in her house, my first thought was to burn the house. My second thought was to ask my scout what kind of woman would do such a thing. The first thought was the tyrant's thought. The second was the king's. I am grateful that I took the second a little more seriously." "You took it seriously enough to come without a sword," Myra said. "Yes. That is what mattered." He smiled just a little. It was the first time she had seen him smile. "My name is Kale," he said. "Myra. I know." He left her cottage that afternoon, with his son wrapped carefully in her best wool blanket and carried, not by him, but by his oldest scout. Kale walked beside the scout the whole way home. Havar took his son back to the Ironclaw 2 days later, when she said it was finally safe to move him. He left a small carved wooden wolf on her table when he went, no bigger than her thumb. He did not say what it was for. He did not need to. The 2 packs did not become friends. 200 years of blood is not undone by 1 morning of tea. But something else happened, something slower and more important. They stopped looking for reasons to bleed each other. The Crescent stopped sending raiding parties across the river. The Ironclaw stopped lighting fires in the border villages. Within a year, traders were moving between the 2 territories for the first time in living memory. Within 5 years, a Crescent rider married an Ironclaw rider. There was a wedding. Both Alphas attended. Both Alphas sat at the same table. Myra did not go to the wedding. She was invited. She sent a basket of dried herbs instead and stayed home. That was the kind of woman she was. She did not become famous. The story of what happened in her cottage was told in the wolf houses of the kingdom for generations, but most people who told it never knew her name. They called her the healer of the river. They said she had stopped a war with 2 baskets and a kettle. Some versions of the story made her old. Some versions made her young. The truth was simpler. She had not stopped to ask whose pups were bleeding in her path. That was all. That was the whole secret. She lived another 40 years in that cottage. People kept bringing her their sick. She kept healing them. Sometimes, on cold nights, she would find offerings on her doorstep that she had not asked for. A side of deer. A bolt of wool. A pair of boots in her exact size, sewn by hands she would never meet. She knew who left them. She did not say anything. She just brought them inside. When she died, her body was found by a child from the village. The child ran for the elders. The elders came. And on the path outside her cottage, they found 2 wolves sitting in the morning sun. A gray one with a black crescent on his forehead. A red one slightly smaller with a small permanent limp. They sat there until she was buried. Then they walked back into the forest, in opposite directions, and the kingdom got on with its quieter, longer peace. That is the end of the story. The pups grew up. They both lived long. And neither one ever forgot the woman who did not stop to ask whose they were.